In this video, I wanted to discuss about momentum in the context of powerlifting, what it looks like when you do have momentum during training and what it looks like when there isn't, and how we can go about generating momentum in order to keep bringing about progress. First off, I wanted to discuss why training without momentum is suboptimal. The way we get into a state where there is no momentum in our training generally is if our expectations are too high and we start a block that is too heavy. As a result of starting too heavy, we generally have nowhere else to go in terms of progress, as the stress and effort required is too high and there are no adaptations that are supporting this prior to this block that's allowing you to make progress. Once you've completed this initial session, in the following week, generally you have nowhere else to go. And so the only other option in order to make progress is to repeat the same loads and hopefully drive the RPE or intensity and the way that that load feels down until you can slowly make load additions again. This method of progress is a near maximal approach in terms of intensity and is a very stressful way in order to make progress. It's more likely to be unsustainable due to the amount of effort required in order to feel like you are going to progress. The other option is to create momentum. When we want to start a block, we do have an ideal place of where we want to end up, but that is not where we should be starting. Rather, we want to think about giving ourselves a runway in order to progress so we can kickstart the process of creating adaptations in order for us to reach this desired outcome. What this might look like in the initial blocks or initial few weeks when we start training is we're leaving kilos in the tank or we're leaving repetitions in the tank in our training. So coming from a more maximal approach style of training, submaximal training looks easier and is therefore less psychologically stressful on our body and as well as mentally. So fatigue is definitely managed a lot better with the submaximal approach, and momentum is more likely to come out of that. The way that momentum feels like week to week is you're able to come into a session and you still feel fresh and feel as though if you were to repeat the same loads, you would far surpass the way that it felt in the previous week, and you can also have the option to progress in load on that given session. One thing that we want to be mindful of with a submaximal approach is although we have the option to add load and feel strong, it does not mean that we should misabuse this and select a load the following week that would be close to maximal. The longer we can stay within a region that is submaximal and allows us to build strength without accruing as much of a fatigue debt, the easier it is for us to select when we want to perform within a block. So for example, say I've got a top single at 180, and for me, I'll rate that at an RPE 6 in week 1. And in the following week, if I were to repeat that load of 180 kilos, the RPE might drop down to an RPE of 5. And so therefore, I could even jump it up in order to progress in RPE. I would then be able to select a load that is essentially anything from 180 all the way up to something that would reach an RPE of 10. But mentally, that gives me the options to feel like I can progress. If we want to be smart about it and stay within the RPE week to week, the natural jump that you can make from 180 would be something like 182, 185 or 187.5, and that would be at a similar RPE. This is going to be a much more sustainable way to create progress for us. So by the time we end the block at something about an RPE 8 or an RPE 9, the adaptations that we have built up slowly across the length of the block will allow us to hit a bigger single or a bigger performance versus if we started with a near maximal approach. I'd like to conclude this video with an analogy. Let's think about two cyclists on a bicycle, right? And we both have them on with their gears on the bike ranging from numbers 1 through 6. When we go from the gear number 1, where it's much easier to pedal and you're able to accelerate much easier, versus gear 6, where the effort required to put a revolution into the pedal is much harder. However, you're able to take a higher top speed. If we were to take this scenario and put them both on a hill, right? So if we are trying to go uphill, who would be able to go uphill easier? The person who cycles from gears 1 and gets all the way up to gear 6 versus the person that starts on gear 6 and tries to pedal themselves uphill. The person who's at a high gear or starting much harder might not even be able to reach the top of the hill and be able to reap the benefits once they start to go downhill. That is the major benefit of feeling like you're on momentum. Feeling as if once those adaptations you have brought in by working hard within fatigue, that is the person who is cycling through the gears and taking what's there, they can reap the benefits of having momentum on their side and allowing the adaptations to fully express by going downhill. It's a bit of a mixture of an analogy, but I hope that makes sense. That'll do it for this video. I hope you've understood a bit more about the concept of training momentum in powerlifting, and hopefully more videos with more topics about powerlifting will come out soon.